we start with our state of dysfunction. For Americans, this is the winter of discontent. Only 40% of Americans say that President Obama has the ability to manage the federal government effectively. 53% think he is not trustworthy. Ratings for Congress are even worse. In the Senate, a nuclear option that shuts off some filibusters makes the atmosphere even more poisonous. Obamacare continues to be a train wreck, and we're heading into an election year that promises to be more political hand-to-hand combat. So I guess the question is, have we reached a point where Americans just don't think government works anymore, and are they right? Now, joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Mikel Holt, former State Representative Michelle Litjens, political strategist Lynne De Bruin, and media trackers Brian Sikma. Brian, we'll start with you. There have been times when things have felt like they were on the wrong track, but is it overstating it to say that there is a level of pessimism and cynicism about American politics that is really at kind of a historic high right now?
No, I would not say it's a historic high. I mean, in 1804, you had the sitting Vice President of the United States kill a former Treasury Secretary in a duel, so we're not anywhere near that right now. Yeah. But I would say this is a natural ebb and flow. The party in power always has their reputation tarnished as the people go along and become disenchanted. And certainly the Obama administration has not done a lot lately to make people want to like them. I mean, they've rolled out this deal with Obamacare that didn't work out so well. The Iranian deal seems to be coming apart almost before it's even on track here, this deal they signed in secret. So the skepticism's natural.
Yeah, but Michael, aren't we at a period right now where if I had asked you, do you think that we're going to accomplish anything either in foreign or domestic policy? I'm guessing that you and I might actually agree that nothing's going to get done for the foreseeable future. I mean, we're at a point now where nothing's happening.
This partisan trail that goes down the middle has been getting wider and wider. You know, in the last 4 or 5 years, I've heard politicians on both sides of the aisle talk about they hate members of the other party. This is not about issues anymore. It's not about personalities. This is pure hatred. I don't see the country moving forward at all.
Okay, Michelle Litjens.
I think we know that this is all a dysfunctional, or politics is dysfunctional nowadays, because CNN had a poll this last week where Republicans were up in a generic ballot by 2 points. If you would have asked Americans 2 months ago if they would have voted Republican or Democrat, they said that the Democrats, they overwhelmingly supported Democrats at that time. So Americans don't know what they believe. They don't know who to trust. And I think we are overwhelmingly becoming segregated, right? Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other, and that group in the middle is becoming smaller.
Okay, Lynne De Bruin, actually Brian Sikma talked about 1804, but you could go back to the middle of the 1800s. We actually had a civil war in this country, and we're obviously not anywhere close to that right now. But we are at a point where the partisanship is so toxic, it is so poisonous. This move in the Senate pretty much guarantees that nothing's going to happen for the next year. Wouldn't you agree?
Right, and I think the cause for this is real simple. For years and years, legislatures have been allowed to do redistricting themselves, and they've, over time, both Democrats and Republicans have redrawn districts to make them more either uber conservative or uber liberal. And once you get elected in a solid district where everyone believes very much the same way as you do, it is a disincentive for anyone to compromise, to actually put the agreements together that make government function. So that's a big cause of this, and it's going to continue.
Well, you said that was a very simple explanation, and that was actually an extremely simplistic explanation.
It
There's
is.
a lot of other things going on in this country, including the radicalization of both parties and the disappearance of moderates. I would also say, on one level, leaving aside just the politics, the dysfunction of the government. We're at a moment in history where I think that people are looking at what's happening with the federal government and even at state and local governments, and there's a rising level of skepticism about whether or not government works the way it's supposed to. Now, and by the way, I do not think that that is a terrible thing.
Well, and
I don't think it's a terrible thing because, I mean, let's face it, we have had this massive push over the last few years to radically expand the power of government in our lives, to radically expand the power of the federal government in our political system, and part of that project was to convince people that the federal government had all the answers, that it would make better decisions than local governments or families and individuals. And I think right now we have a younger generation that is watching this dysfunction of government and is going to rethink some of those political premises. Do you agree?
I think the only way we're going to fix this is actually to have voters pay attention to what's going on, just like you said. If the younger generation and if other people start paying attention, we have so much money spent on campaigns nowadays. They wouldn't need to spend that money if all Americans started to engage in the process and say, you know what they're doing there is wrong and we need to fix it.
No, it's actually the exact opposite. They are paying attention. And I think a point that you raised should really be put on the table. What happened to the moderates? I thought the moderates were supposed to be in the majority
Michael,
here.
the moderates haven't disappeared. They're just not getting people elected that represent the moderate view because of the makeup of the districts. And I really think that those folks have to get much more active. They are the swing voters that are determining elections. And until we start holding our politicians accountable for the dysfunction, everyone says they like their elected official, but everyone else is a jerk. And until people start realizing that their official is part of the problem, we won't get things changed.
No, I think what this comes down to is the fact that both political parties have at times lost the trust of their own constituencies as well as the respect of people of the opposite political parties. So into this gap, there's an opportunity for a new generation of leaders to come in. And I think that's where we're going to see more policy ideas born of this, where the moderates haven't disappeared. And I think they're going to come out there and they're going to start supporting more substantive alternatives if conservatives will put that forward.
But the dynamism in American culture, I think, is not going to be in its politics. It's not going to be in government. We are still a dynamic and a resilient country. But I think that a lot of bright young people are going to look at all this and say, you know what, if I want to make a difference, maybe I don't get into politics. I don't look to government to solve these problems. So what has your glass half full and what has your glass half empty this week? Let's go around the table. Michael Holt.
Well, last Wednesday I read somewhere that up to 80,000 families in Milwaukee would face Thanksgiving eating Cheerios or cornflakes. But thanks to the efforts of television stations, including this station, dozens of civic organizations, many of these people were able to eat a healthy Thanksgiving meal.
Michelle Litjens.
My glass is half full because MSNBC finally started thinking straight and they let go of Alec Baldwin from his nighttime show. But my glass is half empty because MSNBC decided to keep Martin Bashir on, the gentleman who said that Sarah Palin should have someone defecate in her mouth. Because obviously if you say something negative about a conservative female, you can keep that person employed.
Lynne De Bruin.
Well, I'm still full after a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner, but my glass is half empty because of the numbers of retailers who opened up for shopping on Thanksgiving evening. This is ridiculous. Leave that holiday alone and shop on Friday.
Brian Sikma.
Well, my glass is half full because some people are trying to solve the problem of a nuclear-armed Iran, but it's half empty because the only plan the president's putting forward these days calls for $7 billion in relief to Iran and lets them keep the 3 Americans they currently hold hostage in their prison system.
Well, my glass is half full because conservative activists are actually pushing back against the one-sided partisan witch hunt being conducted under the guise of a John Doe. It's half empty because that secret investigation continues, including the gag orders saying that you will go to jail if you speak about this, if you're involved in the investigation. Next on Sunday Insight, Governor Scott Walker is on a book tour. Is that the first step in a run for the White House? Intimidated, making the talk show rounds to talk about his experience here in Wisconsin and his advice to fellow conservatives around the country. Naturally, this led to a lot of buzz about Walker's possible interest in the 2016 presidential election and how that might play out right here in Wisconsin, where Congressman Paul Ryan may be interested in the same thing. At one point, Walker said that no sitting member of Congress need apply for the presidential nomination, but later backed off and said, well, that didn't include Paul Ryan. But it was a little awkward. So how is that going to play out, Michelle Litjens?
Well, we should be so excited that we have such star power in the GOP in the state of Wisconsin, first of all. But neither of those gentlemen have said that they're running for any other office other than the ones that they currently hold. Yeah. And I'm excited that Governor Walker is out on this book tour. I'm glad that he's telling the story about what he's done in the state of Wisconsin. And hopefully he's raising a lot of campaign money at the same time.
Okay, but they're not both going to run, are they?
You know, right now,
at some point they're going to have to sit down and have a conversation and go, you, not me, or me, not you?
Well, the electorate is so fickle. Yeah. Right now, they need to work very hard at getting reelected at their current positions, and then they can talk about those in the
All right,
future.
well, that's an interesting question, because is there a danger that with the governor out there with that book, that in fact people are going to think that he's looking past the next election, Lynne De Bruin?
You know, I think that's going to happen no matter what, even if he didn't do a book tour. The bottom line is he's on the buzz of a potential shortlist for Republican nominees, and that's going to continue to be, he's going to continue to be there unless he makes some horrific gaffe or unless he announces that he's not planning to run and people believe him. So he's going to stay there, and I think Paul Ryan, I agree with Michelle that it's good for Republicans in Wisconsin to have 2 shining stars in the national. It's good for Wisconsin nationally, but in the end, they're going to have to decide together which one's in and which one's out.
Oh, okay, Brian Sikma, I mean, the fact is that Scott Walker and Paul Ryan are pretty close.
They're
close
friends,
politically. They're friends. So how do they sort that out?
Well, I think they're going to sit down and look at probably where they're at in their current positions. I mean, it makes sense right now that Paul Ryan's got a very bright future just because of his familiarity with the federal budget and the work he's done there. He could work as a Treasury Secretary. He could work as Ways and Means Committee chairman. Governor Walker is there as a governor. He's an executive. He's probably not going to run for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin. So that would kind of leave open a White House bid. I'm just speculating here at something like this, but I would see that each of them are a benefit to the other's career, and they're going to find some way to amiably work this out so they can both move forward and continue to benefit themselves.
Okay, Mikel Holt.
You know, between the two of them, I would assume that the governor has a better chance of winning. I'm not saying he can win, but he has national recognition. He's a governor. And you remember Paul Ryan ran the last time as VP and couldn't even win his own district. I do not see Paul Ryan running for president. I just don't see it.
Well, except that being a vice presidential
nominee
gets you in line, and there have been a lot of people who've run for vice president that then run for president in the future. You know, part of it is the fact that there is the book out there, and I've talked to him on the radio, and of course he's saying, no, this doesn't mean that I'm, generating presidential buzz, but of course that's what you do when you write a book like this. You know, the book is, about half of it is about the experience with Act 10, but there's clearly a lot of advice. How do Republicans need to position themselves? How do they need to message themselves? What do they do that is wrong? He's highly critical of Mitt Romney in this book, so clearly it's setting himself up. And the reality is that right now it is highly plausible to say that the next nominee should come from outside of Washington. Our first segment, we talked about how incredibly screwed up it was in Washington, and everybody in the Senate or the House of Representatives is complicit in that. I mean, it's hard not to have that stench attack.
Well, look at our state legislature. Yeah. I mean, they're just as broken and...
And you'll notice that nobody from the state legislature is really running for anything except for the lieutenant governor, I mean,
here's what's interesting. I mean, you have a lot of these presidential candidates that make this move to try to write a book and put it out there. Walker's story is slightly different. I know I'm biased. I'm from Wisconsin. But the guy actually did something. So he's writing about something relevant in a modern American politics and how he got something done. This isn't just another blueprint for how we can do something as a party or how he thinks the Republican Party can do it. But he's saying, look, I've been here in my party. I've done something.
All right, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's hand out some unsolicited advice. And Mikel Holt, you are first.
Well, mine's the Bucks owner, Herb Cole. If you're really serious about getting a new arena, I think you better put a much better team on the floor right now.
Michelle Litjens.
President Obama, please stop taking advice from Jimmy Carter on how to negotiate with Iran. Remember, Iran invented chess, and they don't negotiate.
Lynne De Bruin.
Well, fundamentalist authors Michael and Debbie Pearl wrote a book with such severe instructions on how to physically discipline your children that 2 children from 2 different families have already died after parents tried to follow their instructions. My advice is to the prosecutors. Find something to charge the Pearls with, or more children will die.
Brian Sikma.
Well, last week, China announced a new air exclusionary zone, meaning that they have certain rights to air over the China Sea. Well, the U.S. Air Force promptly responded by sending 2 unarmed B-52s right into the zone, and China didn't even know it till it happened. My advice for China, before you bark, make sure you can actually bite.
Okay, my unsolicited advice is to, and you know who you are, whatever the government decides, do not use your cell phone to yak and annoy all of your fellow passengers when you're on an airplane. It's just obnoxious. Next on Sunday Insight, is it the end of Black Friday, and is that a good or a bad thing? So, was Black Friday more like Gray Friday this year, and is that necessarily a bad thing? More and more retailers moved up the unofficial start of the holiday season by opening their doors on Thanksgiving Day. Now, some were open all day. Others opened in the evening after the turkey was packed away. So, Lynn, is this just an inevitable casualty of the commercialization of our society, or should families draw the line at Turkey Day?
Well, I think families should definitely draw the line at Turkey Day. I mean, we call it Turkey Day, but the bottom line is that it's one of our nation's oldest celebrations, the celebration of Thanksgiving, and the idea that that would get wiped out by the commercialization or some desperate retailers who want to draw in the crowds even earlier is ridiculous. I don't have any problem with Black Friday. My daughter goes every year with her boyfriend's family. They shop from midnight till 7 a.m. Got no problem with that. But leave Thanksgiving alone. And
okay, we used to talk about the war on Christmas, which either was or wasn't. But here we have the war on Thanksgiving, and it looks like it's already over. Well, I mean, the reality is, are you really going to turn this back? The retailers would not do this unless they were going to make money doing it,
and part of the reason they did it this year is that there's the shorter time span. And I think we've got to figure out whether, how to reconcile that. But bottom line, there's plenty of time in 3 weeks to get all the shopping you need done.
Okay, Michelle Litjens.
I actually think they're hurting themselves because for those of us who participated in Black Friday, you'd get the newspaper, you'd sit down on the table, you'd look over all of the flyers and see which store has the best deals and where you're going to go. You're not going to have that anymore if you get rid of the Black Friday shopping and you start everything on Thursday. And I think they are going to see less income from this because a lot of people, including myself, bought more than we should have on Black Friday.
Okay.
Well, I'm still stuck on them calling it Black Friday. You know, I had to throw that in there anyway. I don't get it. I heard there were people who were already intense Wednesday.
Yeah. Those are people who have no life.
Yeah, I don't
understand.
Get it.
Yeah.
You and I go shopping for Christmas on the 24th. It takes us 3 hours, and we're finished.
Yes.
You know, why
Mikel,
would you get
Mikel
all
Holt
those
is a man
crowds?
after my own heart on all of that.
Why fight these
I
crowds?
think inevitably what's going to happen is that you're going to move it in front of Thanksgiving. That not only are you going to have Black Friday creeping into Thanksgiving, but maybe the solution is you just do it the Friday before. Then there's no excuse for actually ruining Thanksgiving as they are. But it is interesting watching the retailers. Some retailers actually were marketing that we are not open on Thanksgiving, that we are respecting the holiday, we are respecting the families, and that's now become a differentiation for some of the stores.
No, I definitely would appreciate that. You know, personally, I'm going to be celebrating with friends and family on Thanksgiving Day. If a retailer wants to open, then the best thing that you can do if you disagree with that, and I do disagree with the idea of shopping on Thursday on Thanksgiving, turn that into commercialization of a day. If you disagree with that, don't go shopping. Then they won't be open next year.
Okay, is what they said this week the same thing as what you heard? Let's go around the table. Mikel Holt.
Well, according to talk show host Rush Limburger, racism no longer a problem in America because Oprah Winfrey made it. She's a millionaire, so racism gone. What I heard was the most idiotic comment I've heard in years from somebody who's so far to the right that he's about to fall over the edge of the earth in a drug-induced stupor.
Michelle.
We all heard what President Obama said to Iran, which reminded a lot of us about what Chamberlain said to Hitler, which kind of got me thinking that maybe we will all hear the roar of a very loud lion like Winston Churchill come 2016.
Lynne De Bruin.
Well, last week, Pope Francis called for big changes in the Catholic Church. He said that they should judge less, do more for the poor, and he called trickle-down economics a naive theory that put too much trust in the powerful. What I heard was the Pope restating some of the most powerful and revolutionary comments of Christ's Sermon on the Mount.
Brian Sikma.
Well, the head of Citizen Action Wisconsin, a pro-Obamacare group, last week declared that talk of insurance cancellation notices is, quote, incredibly misleading and unethical. Well, that's kind of ironic. Maybe he was trying to simply paint over the fact that according to the Obama administration's own estimates, over the next 2 years, 93 million Americans will receive such notices. Well, so much for Obamacare.
Well, when Ryan Braun spoke to the media for the first time last Wednesday, he said, "I'm really sorry." What I heard was, "I'm really sorry I got caught." Next on Sunday Inside, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. Winners and losers of the week. Mikel Holt, you're first.
Well, last week, Miller Recycling and Foreman Recycling have agreed to pay for a gun buyback program that was suggested by some black ministers. I don't think this is going to slow the murder rate in Milwaukee, but it is a good gesture. My losers of the week, according to James Causey, Journal Sentinel columnist, 50% of all black men will be incarcerated before the age of 30. Does that imply that half the black men in Milwaukee are criminally minded? Or is there something else at play here? Before you answer that question, remember, in Minnesota, which has the same demographics, less than a third the number of black men end up in prison.
Michelle Litjens.
Unfortunately, the winner is Iran. Obama told Iran, if you like your nuclear weapons, you get to keep them. We'll lift our sanctions and we'll forgive your debt. And don't worry about the American hostages you're holding. You get to keep them too. How sad that Iran wins while everyone else loses. The real losers this week are all of the stores who decided to open their doors and require their employees to work on Thanksgiving. Americans need to take a step back and say a day with their family and rest should be our priorities and respected by all.
Lynne De Bruin.
We thank our elected officials for their service, but often fail to thank everyday government employees who also dedicate their lives to serving us. My winner is one such person, Carol Adam, who's retiring next week after 25 years of helping Milwaukee County residents with humor and kindness. She and thousands like her deserve our thanks. My losers are those who don't vote, but complain about government workers, elected officials, and legislation. This unpatriotic apathy is as much of a problem as the things they complain about.
Brian Sikma.
Well, my winner of the week is Senator Ron Johnson, who strongly rebuked Senate Democrats for their recent decision to change 225 years worth of Senate rules. My losers this week are the YWCA of Southeast Wisconsin, Briggs & Stratton, and Johnson Controls. Those groups are sponsoring a speech in Milwaukee by Harry Belafonte, an entertainer turned activist who called the first 2 African-American secretaries of state house slaves, and who has been roundly criticized by both the right and left for his outrageous comments.
Well, my winner, Hobby Lobby, the family-owned business that is challenging the administration's mandate that it pay for abortion pills. Last week, the Supreme Court agreed to take up the case. It could be a landmark for religious liberty in this country. Loser, anybody who brought those Obama talking points about health insurance to your family Thanksgiving gathering. There's a time for politics and propaganda, and there's a time for family football and turkey, and they should never, ever be confused. Thanks for joining us, and join me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon.